Hi guys, welcome to day 7. Today we're talking about 3 priests, a military mutiny that lasted 1 day, and how the Spanish Empire made a catastrophic mistake that guaranteed their own downfall. This is the story of the Cavite Mutiny of 1872 and the execution of Fathers Mariano Gómez, José Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora, collectively remembered as GOMBURZA. Their deaths sparked the Philippine Revolution, inspired José Rizal, and proved that sometimes killing your opponents is the worst strategy possible. If you're following this series, smash that like button, comments, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and let's uncover how 3 priests became martyrs who destroyed an empire. January 20th, 1872. The Spanish military arsenal at Fort San Felipe in Cavite is staffed by about 200 Filipino soldiers and workers. These aren't revolutionaries. They're colonial employees who maintain Spanish weapons and fortifications. Their grievance is specific and economic. The Spanish have just reinstated the tribute tax and ended exemptions that arsenal workers previously enjoyed. Essentially, the government cut their pay and increased their taxes simultaneously. The workers are angry, but not planning revolution. Then something happens that historians still debate. Either the workers spontaneously mutiny when a sergeant tries to enforce new regulations, or there's a coordinated plan that goes wrong, or Spanish authorities deliberately provoke an incident to justify a crackdown. Whatever the trigger, on the evening of January 20th, Filipino workers at the arsenal kill the Spanish officers, seize weapons, and briefly take control of the fort. They apparently believe that other garrisons across the Philippines will join them in a coordinated uprising. No other garrisons join. By the next morning, January 21st, Spanish forces have surrounded the arsenal. The mutineers surrender. The mutiny lasts less than 24 hours. In any rational colonial administration, this would end with punishing the mutineers and addressing the economic grievances that sparked the incident. The Spanish do something much more destructive. They decide the mutiny was part of a vast conspiracy involving Filipino priests, intellectuals, and the growing movement of Filipino clergy seeking equality with Spanish friars. Governor General Rafael Izquierdo launches a witch hunt to find the conspiracy's intellectual authors. He targets the 3 most prominent Filipino priests advocating for reform: Mariano Gómez, José Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora. Father Mariano Gómez is 85 years old, the Archbishop of Cavite, a respected elder of the Filipino clergy. Father José Burgos is 35, brilliant, outspoken, the leading advocate for Filipino priests to receive the same positions and respect as Spanish friars. Father Jacinto Zamora is a parish priest known for his charity work and integrity. None of them were in Cavite during the mutiny. There's no evidence any of them planned, supported, or even knew about the mutiny beforehand. But they're influential. They challenge Spanish ecclesiastical authority, and they're Filipino. That's enough. The Spanish arrest all 3 priests along with dozens of other prominent Filipinos. The trial is a farce. Confessions are extracted through torture. Witnesses are coerced. Evidence is fabricated. The verdict is predetermined. On February 17th, 1872, less than a month after the mutiny, the colonial court sentences Fathers Gómez, Burgos, and Zamora to death by garrote. Garroting is strangulation by a metal collar that slowly crushes the neck, a deliberately cruel execution method designed to maximize suffering and public intimidation. On February 17th, 1872, at Bagumbayan Field in Manila, now Luneta Park, the 3 priests are executed publicly. Thousands of Filipinos are forced to watch. Father Gómez at 85, barely understands what's happening. Father Burgos proclaims his innocence to the end, shouting that he's never been to Cavite and has committed no crime. Father Zamora faces death with dignity, praying for his executioners. The Spanish think they're eliminating troublemakers and sending a message. Instead, they create martyrs who will inspire a revolution. Among those watching or hearing about the execution is a 10-year-old boy named José Rizal. The execution of GOMBURZA traumatizes him and plants the seeds of revolutionary consciousness. Rizal will later dedicate his novel El Filibusterismo to the memory of the three priests, explicitly linking his revolutionary writings to their martyrdom. When Rizal writes his novels exposing Spanish colonial abuses, when he inspires Bonifacio to found the Katipunan, when he becomes the spark of the Philippine Revolution, it all traces back to this moment when three innocent priests were strangled for a crime they didn't commit. The Cavite Mutiny and the execution of GOMBURZA reveal something crucial about Spanish colonial rule by 1872. The Spanish had lost the ability to distinguish between reform and revolution. Filipino priests asking for equal treatment weren't revolutionaries. They were reformists working within the system. By treating reform as revolution, by executing priests for crimes they didn't commit, the Spanish pushed moderate Filipinos toward radical resistance. They proved that working within the system was futile because the system itself was irredeemably unjust. The executions also exposed the role of the Catholic Church as a colonial institution. The Filipino clergy weren't rejecting Catholicism. They were asking for Filipino priests to lead Filipino parishes rather than being subordinate to Spanish friars forever. This was a reasonable request. The Spanish friars blocked it because they understood that maintaining religious authority meant maintaining colonial control. If Filipinos controlled their own churches, they'd start asking why they couldn't control their own government, their own economy, their own country. The aftermath of GOMBURZA's execution radicalized an entire generation. Young Filipinos studying in Europe formed the propaganda movement, demanding reforms and equality within the Spanish Empire. When reforms were repeatedly denied, some turned to revolutionary action. The direct line from GOMBURZA in 1872 to the Katipunan in 1892 to the Philippine Revolution in 1896 is clear. The Spanish killed 3 priests and guaranteed their empire's destruction. There's a specific cruel irony to GOMBURZA's story. These were Catholic priests, educated in Spanish institutions, who believed in working within the colonial system for gradual reform. They represented the best-case scenario for Spanish colonialism. Assimilated Filipino elites who accepted Spanish rule but asked for more equitable treatment. By killing them on fabricated charges, the Spanish sent an unambiguous message: even total assimilation, even service to the church, even loyalty to Spain meant nothing if you were Filipino. That message destroyed any legitimacy Spanish rule might have claimed. Today, GOMBURZA are remembered as martyrs. Their faces appear on commemorative coins, their names are taught in schools, their execution date is sometimes commemorated. But do we fully understand what they represent? They weren't armed revolutionaries. They were priests asking for fair treatment. They didn't advocate violent overthrow. They advocated reform. The Spanish killed them anyway and called it justice. That's colonialism in its purest form. Violence dressed up as law, oppression justified as order, and murder disguised as execution. The Cavite Mutiny itself, the actual event that triggered everything, remains historically murky. Did Spanish authorities deliberately provoke it to justify a crackdown on Filipino reformists? Some historians think so. Did it reflect genuine revolutionary organizing that failed? Possibly. Or was it simply frustrated workers lashing out, which the Spanish then used as pretext for a witch hunt? Most likely. What's certain is that the Spanish response was disproportionate, unjust, and ultimately self-destructive. Gómburza's execution proved that Spanish colonial rule rested entirely on violence. Without justice, without legitimacy, without any path for Filipinos to gain equal rights within the system, colonialism was just brutal force, holding down a population, waiting for the right moment to rise. That moment came 24 years later, in 1896, when Bonifacio and the Katipunan launched the revolution. But the true spark wasn't fired in 1896. It was fired on February 17th, 1872, when 3 priests died for crimes they didn't commit and became symbols of everything wrong with colonial rule. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Subscribe because days 8, 9, and 10 will continue uncovering the hidden truths of Philippine history.